Hey, you guys, welcome back. So we're talking about rhetorical analysis, and in my last video, I talked about rhetorical situation, which was author, audience, and purpose. So now we're going to move on and talk about rhetorical appeals, which is ethos, pathos, and logos. So I'm going to start today with ethos. So basically, we think about the word ethical when we think about ethos, but basically what it is it's the way that the author tries to make us trust them. So it's an appeal to credibility. How does that author build his or her credibility? And so we'll talk about the different ways that they'll do that. And these are the things that you're looking for whenever you start to analyze essays yourself. So first of all, if you are looking at a good source or a credible source will use other credible, reliable sources. And they'll also cite those properly, because there's one thing to use them, and if you don't cite them, if you don't give them credit, then you've gone down a notch in credibility. Publishing work in credible publications. Earlier, I talked about an article that was published in Men's Health versus an article that was published in the Journal of the American Medical Association. Obviously, for almost everything, we would probably trust the one that was in the Journal of American Medical Association. And that's because it's just a more credible publication, and the other one's kind of a magazine. Not to say that Men's Health is not credible, but if I had to choose between the two, then I would always pick the JAMA. I think there's always something to be said for looking at the opposition and looking at it fairly. So if you're somebody who has an opinion and you can at least see and acknowledge that there's another side to your argument, you're already a smarter person, number one. But it already shows that you're an author who is fairly looking at it and not just somebody with a hidden agenda. Okay, establishing common ground. So the way that authors establish common ground a lot of time is they look for a value system, and they're looking for a value system that you as the audience kind of shares with them, because if we're on the same ground and we have these same belief systems, then they can manipulate us basically, and we're more likely to trust them. Having expertise on the subject in the article. Obviously, you probably wouldn't want something that was published by Miss Hunter about coronavirus, because I don't know anything about it except for all the millions of things I'm reading online. And then proofreading. I know that sounds crazy, but I think we can see that if there's something that has so many careless grammar mistakes, we definitely are like, ugh, I don't even care. And a lot of times we stop paying attention to what they have to say, and we start thinking more about those mistakes. So kind of keep that in your mind. Okay, so, and basically whenever you're doing your analysis, you're saying to yourself, is this a credible author? And since you're actually comparing to, you say to yourself, which article is more credible? And the analysis there is you telling me why one is more credible than the other. Okay, so the next thing we're looking at is pathos. Pathos is my favorite. I think it's a lot of people's favorite, because basically, it's the emotional appeals that people have. And so this is what I always say. It appeals to my feeling brain, or my sweetheart. It appeals to my feeling brain and not my thinking brain. And so the thing about argument is, a lot of times we don't think with our thinking brain. We think with our sweet little feeling brains. And so it's these appeals that people have that appeal to my heart. And so we'll talk a little bit about that. But probably one of the things that people always talk about is that there was this, probably a couple years ago, there was this ad campaign. Actually, it's probably been like 10 years ago. There was this ad campaign by the ASPCA. And it was Sarah McLachlan singing the song about all these sad little puppies. And, anytime I'm just like, here's my money. Give this money to these puppies because they're so sad. And that was not my thinking brain that decided to give them my money. It was my sad brain that saw the sad puppies. So that's kind of what pathos is. It appeals to that part of your brain. And so it really is not necessarily the best kind. And so we'll talk about different ways that people establish pathos. And so, telling a personal story, because personal stories, we relate to those. And so, a lot of times when we hear a personal story, it appeals to our emotions, and we're likely to side with somebody. Telling a moving story, making promises, that works. It's crazy that it works. But in professional argument, pathos is probably the weakest of the rhetorical appeals. I do think a good argument might have some pathos because pathos is interesting. But I don't necessarily think that a good argument is ever going to be full of that emotion. You're really going to want to go to my next one, which is, see the sad puppy? Oh, isn't that sweet? Sad. That's not a logical puppy, and it's not logos, you guys. Logos, the appeal to reason. Now, in an argument, you really do want more appeal to logic than you do to pathos. And so it depends a lot on reasoning. And I would say the things that I look for whenever I'm looking for the logic in something, I look at empirical data. So has this person decided to collect or do their own experiments? That's like empirical data. That's what I mean. Quoting statistics or facts from other people's empirical data. You don't necessarily want to look at their opinions. You want to look at their studies and their experiments. And then I will take expert testimony or opinion if they are true experts, not just somebody who has an opinion on the subject, but an expert in the field. So like I said, I trust the CDC because usually it's run by doctors who have more expertise in the field of coronavirus. So that's kind of what I think about with that. And so I want you to think about how when we do these articles, you're going to do a popular article versus a more professional scholarly article. And so one thing that I'm already thinking, and this is giving you a huge hint, but one of the things that I'm already thinking is that those professional arguments or articles are going to have more logos, and probably the ones that are more pop are going to have more pathos. It's just usually how it goes. And so, and that's probably because scholarly journals are aimed at a specific audience. It's people who kind of already know the field and probably are already professionals in the field, and pop sources are for your more kind of broad audience. So keep that in your mind. And then I saw this online and I was like, I'm just going to steal it. So I found this great little chart, and I think it's kind of fun because it talks about like the different things that we see in ethos, pathos, and logos. So that's kind of the idea there. Okay, so again, you guys, if you have any questions about these, I know it's been kind of a fast intro to this, but I want you to kind of start thinking about it. And so for your homework on Tuesday, you do have to rhetorically analyze an article. Go ahead and just give it a try. Look for author, audience, purpose, ethos, pathos, logos, and just see what you see. Obviously, I'm going to create a video probably on Tuesday about what I see in that, and I actually have it all highlighted and everything. And that's one thing I do suggest. Usually what I do is when I'm reading, I get 3 highlighters. And so when I go through it, I say, I'm going to highlight everything in pink, that is ethos. Everything in green, that's logos. And orange will be pathos. I try to set it up that way so then I can kind of see the different examples. And a couple things you might see is there might be some overlap, and but I think that's a really easy way to do it. And so whenever I show you what I've done, it's going to be highlighted just in case. So if you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask. I think our Zoom meeting was pretty successful the other day, so I'll probably kind of continue to be on here on Zoom at 1 o'clock on Tuesdays and Thursdays if anybody has any questions. But if you do want to have a Zoom meeting, really anytime, I would say during working hours, if at all possible, send me a text and I'll just send you an email and we'll get right on Zoom and do it. So, okay. So if y'all have any questions, please let me know. Y'all have a great weekend. Yay. Bye.